Hey guys, Lee with LG Speed and Custom here. In this video, we are going to build a diagonal link for a panhard bar, as well as fabricate some coilover brackets in Philippe's 46 Ford Coupe. I'm back working on Philippe's 46 Ford. So the first video, we did a teardown on this car. Second video, we installed a Speedway Motors coilover IFS front suspension. Third video, we narrowed a Ford 9-inch rear end almost 6 inches to fit it underneath this car with these big 245, 45, 17 tires. Fourth video, we built a parallel 4-link rear suspension for it. And now in video 5, we're going to continue on with that. So first of all, thanks to everybody that reached out and wished me well. As regular viewers that watched the last video on this know, I never finished this because I got sick. I got like a crazy sinus cold and I was out for like almost a week and pretty much all recovered now. So we're going to get right back into it. The last two things we got to do on this rear suspension is we need to mount. We got some coilovers here that we got to build some brackets for. Now, this 4-link that we put in this, Philippe, when he dropped this car off, he supplied me with just a cheap Johnny Law Motors 4-link kit that was so far from working. All we actually used from it was the 4-link bars, and the rest we built from scratch. These are the coilover mounts and lower 4-link bars that came with that kit, and I think we can make these work still. If we cut these off here and get rid of that 4-link bar, the rest of this is still totally useful and should work fine. So we're going to use that to mount the coilovers on the bottom of the rear end. We'll build our own brackets for the top of the rear end. But before we do that, we need to locate this rear end side for side. So I was talking about doing a panhard bar versus a Watts link, and I said how Watts links, that yes, in theory, they are a better design than a panhard bar. However, in the real world, the rear end moves so little side for side that the extra effort and the extra weight, because fabricating a Watts link takes way more, has way more moving pieces and more nuts and bolts and just so much more than a panhard bar. So you got like that to factor in as well. However, I'm not going to do either of those. One thing I've always wanted to try, and I did briefly look at it while I was under there last week, but it wasn't until I started reading comments from that video when a couple people, Kevin Harms is one that pops out, said, why don't you do a diagonal link instead? And you know what? I really like that idea. So I think that's what we're going to do. But for those of you that have no idea what I'm talking about, why do you need a panhard bar? What's a Watts link? Watts link? Watts link? Diagonal link? What's all this stuff mean and why do we need it? Let me draw a couple diagrams and I'll show you. For starters, there is two kinds of 4-links. We've got a triangulated 4-link where the bottom bars are like parallel with the frame rails. Here's our rear end. And then the top two bars are triangulated like that, forming a triangle. Now the advantages of this is the rear end can't move side for side, because if it goes to move this way, this bar is going to prevent it from moving that way. When it goes to move this way, this bar is going to prevent that from moving. The disadvantage to a triangulated 4-link is these two top bars running like this take up so much space. You got no room for exhaust. They're in the way. So a parallel 4-link, which is what we built in this car, has two bottom bars running like that, and then it has two top bars running right over top of it. from the side, it would look like this. Now, the advantage of this is it takes up way less space than a triangulated four-link. The disadvantage of this is your rear end has nothing stopping it from moving side for side. You go around a corner and all the body weight shifts to one side and it's just going to whoosh all the way over. So you need something to stop this from moving. A panhard bar is the most common route. So let's look at it. This is looking at it from the top down, by the way. Let's look at it from behind the car. There's one tire. There's the other tire. Here's our rear end. Up here we've got frame rails. So a panhard bar will attach to the rear end like that, usually on a pivot point, and then it'll attach to the frame rail like that. And it's basically, I'm sure you guys have all seen these underneath the car, it's a bar that goes like that. So it ties the rear end and the frame rails together to prevent it from moving side for side. Now the disadvantage of a panhard bar is because it pivots here and pivots here, as this bar, goes up and down, it is going to create an arc. As that arc goes up and down, your rear end is going to follow that arc, meaning it's going to move like this. Now, this is what I talk about how in the real world, it moves so minimal that it doesn't really matter. There's a few videos back, I actually did a computerized drawing and calculated the math over I think it was a 6-inch up and down movement on our suspension and the length of the panhard bar. The longer your panhard bar is, the less arc you're going to have. That particular video, I think it was on Steve Chase's 50 Meteor with air ride. Anyways, as the air ride went up and down, this arc only moved the rear end, I think it was an eighth of an inch on the arc. So so minimal that you'll never actually notice that in the real world. Now, how does a Watts link prevent that? Well, a Watts link, here we got our rear end again. What a Watts link does is it has a piece that welds to the back of the rear end, kind of looks like this, and it pivots in the middle. So this piece here goes like that. Now from our frame rail to the top, we have a bar that pivots here and pivots here. Then you have a second bar that goes from here up to the other frame rail, and it pivots. So as your rear end goes up and down, and this makes its arc, this piece at the same time arcs this way, and then this one arcs that way, and they all arc together. And what that does is allows the rear end to move up and down, but without it moving side for side. Now, the disadvantage to this is compared to a panhard bar where you have 2 mounts. That's it. One bar with 2 mounts. Here you have 1 mount, 2 mounts, 3 mounts, 4 mounts, 2 bars, 3 bars, and then a pivot point in the middle. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff going on. Super overcomplicated, super not necessary. Now, we're not going to do any of these. We're going to do a diagonal link. And what a diagonal link does is, here we've got our rear end again with our parallel 4-link. And then we got our 2 top bars at the top. What it does is it connects this pivot point here on a diagonal to this pivot point here. And it goes on the lower bar. So for example, here's our rear end housing. And over here, we've got our frame rails. We've got our top bar and our bottom bar. Now, it will connect from here and then go across to this point on the other bar, which keeps it down low and out of the way. So the cool thing about these is the back of the rear end it frees up so much space. You have no stuff in the way up here. Because it's crossed from the bottom bar, the drive shaft and stuff is all up in here. It's below the drive shaft. It's usually below your exhaust system. So it should have lots of room. So hopefully that clears some stuff up for you guys and educate you guys on why you need this stuff, what it does, what all these different terms mean, different designs. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. You just have to kind of pick what's right for you. So the diagonal link, I've never built a diagonal link from scratch before. I've installed lots of them on 4-link kits that I've bought for other vehicles. The first thing I have done, okay, well that's not going to open up, is I went over to our local 4x4 shop, West Shore Spring and 4x4, and I have purchased 2 Heim joints, a left-hand thread and a right-hand thread. For those that watched the previous video on the 4-link, I like to do the left-hand and the right-hand thread so you can adjust everything without actually taking it apart. Just loosen the jam nuts off and thread the bar. Now we have rod ends on there, which they have a rubber bushing in them, and the Heim joint does not have a rubber bushing. So the Heim joint it pivots this way, but then it also has this little ball and socket deal so that it rotates that way. We want this because we want it to be able to pivot this way on our suspension as well as pivot this way going up and down. Now, there's some advantages and disadvantages to this. The reason why most street cars use the rubber bushing is because the rubber isolates road noise. The Heim joint, because it is metal on metal, it does not. So it will transfer road noise and stuff into the car. I think because we're just doing this on only the panhard bar, it's only going to be just these 2 links. It'll be minimal enough that I don't think it will, you won't notice it. And Philippe is not building this car for comfort. He's making a statement with it. So I don't think a little bit of road noise will affect him. Now, if this 4-link rear suspension was built entirely out of Heim joints, you're going to feel all that road noise and every vibration through the car. Similar to hard motor mounts versus rubber motor mounts. You want to the rubber is there to isolate noise and vibrations. The downside to the rubber is they're not as strong. A Heim joint like this will take some serious power. Now we're not running super serious power through this. The main reason I chose the Heim joints over a rubber end is just because they pivot in all the directions like we want. All right, we're finally under the car building something. I'm sure half you guys have fallen asleep by now just listening to me yak. So we're going to build a bracket to bolt this right here on the same pivot point as where our 4-bar pivots. And it's going to go from here all the way over to our other 4-link lower mount down here. Basically a bar from there to there. So the first thing I think we'll do is I'm going to draw up on the computer. I think I'll make a bracket rather than a weld-on one. We'll have it so that this bolt comes out and the bracket will bolt on using this bolt, and then we can kind of fine-tune it where we want it, because we don't want it totally flat. We want it kind of on an angle. If we can make it on an angle going up towards the other side. That bracket should be, the one on this side should be exactly the same, just a mirror image of it. So let's get a measurement of the depth of this bolt. And then, I don't know, if we have our Heim joint, say, 1/8 of an inch away from that bolt head, and that's where our center of our hole will be. There's some calipers here. What are we there? 0.4. 0.4. We'll just call it 0.5, which is a 1/2 inch. So we'll just make sure we're a 1/2 inch off there. So we'll go over to the computer now, and I'm going to draw it on Fusion 360 and then cut it out on the plasma table. So keep in mind with that, we're going to cut this out of 3/16 plate. So not only do we have our 1/2 inch thickness that we need to stay away from the bolt head, we got to add another 3/16 of an inch for the thickness of the plate. And then that 4-link kit, or those 4-link bars that I put in, those came from the kit. We just reused those. They didn't come with washers. I kind of like to put washers in, so maybe we'll add just a little bit more for our washer. Well, that didn't really work out. User error. I broke it in the wrong spot. So I cut another one out and tried it again, but I still couldn't get it narrow enough. And the reason being is as it was folding, I could fold one end good, and then when I'd fold the other end, it would hit the machine. So made a third one. And it worked out, but it took a little bit, that's still really hot. It took a little bit of doing. I ended up building a fixture like this that goes in the jig, which is probably a little ridiculous because I think I spent more time building this fixture than if I would have just welded this together out of 3 pieces. And it worked okay, but it still struggled. And I think that's mostly because my press, which is this homemade thing that I got from an estate. I didn't build it. Someone built it, died. Then I got it, which is how I got most of my tools. It's just not heavy enough. So what I'm gonna do with this one is, before I go and squish it in there, I think I'm going to heat this up just to make it a little bit easier. I forgot to turn this sideways. I think we can fix that on the bench though. Yeah, that was my fault because I had that piece turned the wrong direction, but we'll straighten that out. Both our brackets are done now, and I've bolted the heim joints in place just to make sure they're gonna fit. I had to take some tubing and cut some spacers to go in there, which was no big deal. So now these fit great, and we can tighten them up. I went to the store and I got some longer bolts to go through there, as well as these bolts as well. So let's bolt these on the car now, and then we can get a measurement for our bar length. All right, these are both bolted in place. They work really good. Happy with that. Now we're just gonna take a measurement from there to there
We're on about halfway threaded in. Let's just call it 30 inches. So we're going to cut a bar at 30 inches and thread it together. I just came over to the tubing corner here, and this is 1-inch DOM tubing, which is what I make my 4 bars and panhard bars and stuff out of. And I was like, I wonder if I've got a cutoff in there. And I found this cutoff here. So we wanted 30 inches, right? This one's 30 3/8, which I think is close enough, it'll work. But more importantly, why this is so awesome, it's already threaded. So I don't know why this is back there. The only thing I can think of is I made a bar for like a different suspension previously, and for whatever reason it didn't work out. It was too long or too short. Probably too short, because if it was too long I could just cut it down. Either way, you know those like when you save little pieces like that and you're like, I'm gonna use that one day? I just used one. I just used it. It's great. I'm taking this win. Just threaded both our ends in our already threaded piece of tubing. I've bottomed them out. I've threaded them in all the way, and that way I know they're like the same distance in there. So from here, I'm just gonna thread the bar out, and I know it's gonna thread out the same on both sides. Yeah, I'm just gonna thread it out until our bolt goes back through. And then tighten the jam nuts up, and we're done. Right there. All right, obviously I still gotta put my spacers in there. There we go, that's nice and happy. Just tighten the stuff up now, and our diagonal link is done. Jam nuts are all tight. We're done. Bam, there we go. One diagonal link going from this corner all the way to this corner. We've got clearance in here. It's a little tight, but I don't think it'll ever hit, because we're gonna have a U-joint here, and then the drive shaft probably won't actually start until this side. And like, keep in mind, the distance from there to there is never gonna change. It's only on this end. So, I mean, that will move a little bit as this goes up and down, but I don't think it will interfere. If it does, I mean, you could always take this over to like a tubing bender and put a little boop, boop in it. But I don't think we'll need to do that. I think it should work okay as is. So basically what this means is our 4-link portion is completely done, and we can move on to, not only can we move on to like mounting our coilovers, but we can undo our brackets that we made earlier for locating the rear end, because it's located now. It should, in theory, maybe we'll try that. I'll unbolt it. I'll make a mark on there. We'll unbolt it, and I'll jack the rear end all the way down, and then jack it all the way up. And in theory, it should land in the same spot. I've got the jack holding the rear end up. I've taken the U-bolts out, and I have marked on here where those sat, so we can do a little cycle test. Let's turn this guy on, sitting on top. It's currently reading 1.3 degrees, which obviously isn't accurate. This is more the correct way, 87, which will be our 3 degrees, but it doesn't sit very nice there, so I'm gonna leave it up there, because all that matters is that it, you know what, let's just make it simple. Let's zero it out. There it is on 0. So I'll let the jack down, and we'll see what happens. Okay. All right, I think our, fuck, that's not gonna work. Well, we dropped it down a bit. as you can see, we're still at 0, which is good. We've come down like 2 inches here, but we're so close to here. It's gonna make contact. So I think I might have to take this off and put a little V shape in it, which is no big deal. I mean, I don't know if I should do that now or if I should wait until I get the coilovers in. I might do it now. Should probably do it now because I want to lower this more for when we're working on it. Obviously, like our ride height, or what I'm hoping the ride height will be, is going to be like 2 inches up from here. So with a V in it and going up and down over bumps, it should be okay, but I want to make sure that it's low enough that you can like let the rear end hang low, because we still got to be able to get these wheels on and off. So we'll want it to hang as low as the coilovers will let it, probably. Interesting. So yeah, a little bit of a learning curve on this, but that's okay. That's part of it. That's why I'm showing you guys this, is so that you see that sometimes you gotta modify stuff. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I've never built a diagonal link before. So I'm still confident this will work out. We just gotta revise it a little bit. I'm marking right now where it's gonna hit so that I know where to put the bend. I'm gonna pull this off now. But first, let's jack it back up and see how our lineup marks go. Because when I pull that bar off and then put it back on, I still want it in that same spot. So let's put it in that spot for starters. Oh yeah, perfect. I've got it press set up here because I don't actually have a proper tubing bender, but this works. I've done this before. So we don't need to go a lot. This might be like a trial and error thing, like move it a little bit and see how it fits. Probably have to go a bit more than that. All right, let's try that. We don't want to go too much because the more we go, like the more we got to lengthen the bar, and we don't want to run out of threads. I'm confident right now that we'll still have enough threads, but let's try it and see where we're at first before we bend it more. All right, this is back together now, and we've got huge clearance in here now, and we actually only had to like thread it out like 2 turns maybe, so lots of threadage still. I'm gonna drop it down and we'll see what happens. All right, I stopped it right there. We still have maybe a 1/4 inch clearance through there. Our pinion angle is reading 0.1, which now it's 0.0. It's so finicky right there. Like if I put my finger on it, it changes. I think we're low enough here. We can get the wheel on and off at that point. So I think we're good. I think this is gonna work. I'll tighten this stuff back up. Hold on, before I do that, let's jack it up one more. Okay, let's wiggle it around. We're suspensioning, going up and down over the road. Now I'm gonna jack it up and we'll see how it fits. And if it lines back up with our Sharpie marks. Oh yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Cool. Success.
All right, Friday morning, coilover time. So these brackets, like I mentioned earlier, or maybe it was in the last video, I can't remember. We can reuse these from the kit. We're just going to cut this bracket off right here, and then we'll reshape this to fit the larger truck 9-inch tube. So the issue with these coilovers, like I don't know what the spring rate is on these coilovers, meaning I have no idea how much this is going to compress when the weight of the car is. It's kind of a gamble, I guess, or trial and error. We do have some adjustment in these lower coilover brackets. There's these 3 holes here that you can adjust the height with, and that gives you like 2 inches. There is also a little bit of adjustability in here, but not a ton, because eventually the shock is going to bottom out and we'll have no more movement. So what that means is I think I'm going to set these coilovers up. I still got to set the preload on them. I just threaded this together right now so that it's a little bit, it's the coil spring has just bottomed out in here. And you're supposed to set coilovers up with 1 inch of preload before you put them in the car. And then you can fine tune them from there. So right now we are at 7 1/4. I'm going to thread this ring in until this spring compresses 1 inch. So we want from there to there, we will want 6 1/4. From there, once it's in the car and compressed, we can fine tune it a little bit, but not a lot. This is basically all our adjustment's going to be. I think I will put it on this top hole, mock this up on the rear end housing, and then see where this sits. I've threaded this in as much as I can get it, and I got a 1/2 inch preload. I can't get the other 1/2 inch. I can't hold it anymore. The issue that I'm having, so most coilovers, the shock body is threaded, and this little nut threads on. On these particular ones, this is just like a normal shock that has an aluminum threaded piece that slides over top, and it's just held on with a snap ring. So it like pivots or turns in there, meaning there's no way that I can hold this threaded slip tube anymore. I can't physically hold it tight enough. I did grab it gently with some big pliers, but I didn't want to like gnarl these threads up too much, and my normal coilover wrench doesn't fit in these coilovers. Also, so I mean, I'm not super well versed in coilovers. I haven't built a lot of cars with coilovers. I've got more experience with airbags or with actual like springs. But this seems super sketchy to me. This slip tube is held onto this coil shock here with just like this little snap ring on the bottom. That's all that's holding this together, is a little snap ring, which I don't know, man. That's like the whole weight of this car going up and down on the road. It's held in with a snap ring. Is that normal for like people with more coilover experience than I have? Is that normal? Because that seems, I don't know, man. That makes me nervous. These are QA1 coilovers on the front, and as you can see, this whole shock body is threaded, and then this big nut, which has the big grooves that my coilover wrench actually like clamps into, it will thread up and down on there without this moving. Anyway, I don't know. I think I'll just go ahead and we'll cut our 4-link bar brackets off of this mount and then reshape the top to fit the housing, bolt it together, and mock it up under there.
Okay, these are trimmed, bolted back together, ready to mock up. So first mock up under here, we've got this like original shock mount. Well, it's not original, this car had lever shocks originally, and someone put tube shocks on it and welded that shock bracket up there, which looks like it's, you know, about in the ballpark of where we want to be. Now, I don't think it's strong enough to work for a coilover mount, but it's probably strong enough to work for mocking this up. If we tack this lower mount in place, bolt our coilover on, and bolt it up in the mount there, and then jack the car up by the rear end and see how much this spring squats. And as long as we don't like jump on it or anything, I think this will probably hold for mock-up purposes, at least, just to see if we're like, even if that spot is a good location or not, or if it's completely out of the ballpark. I've unbolted our lower coilover mounts again and bolted them to this jig that I have. I built this last year, I think, for putting coilover brackets on a quick change rear end, and I think it'll work for this car as well. It just bolts in like that, and it holds them both like they're totally dead straight in a line and parallel with each other. This is why this jig is so cool. I've got it sitting underneath here on a bottle jack, and I've measured from the bolt, the backing plate bolt, to the edge, and we're at 9 inches on both sides, and we're at 90 degrees. So this is holding both our coilover mounts in exactly the same position. So they're like the same side for side. Let's go ahead and tack these now. Cool, that's all tacked on. I'm gonna go ahead and unbolt it now. And then I think, oh, I might need 2 hands for this. And then I think we can mock our coilovers up and maybe put some load on it. Do you guys think 4 tack welds on this is gonna hold that? I don't know, I guess we'll find out. Or should I weld it up a little better? I'm pretty confident. I don't like welding stuff up until I know it's gonna work. And I'm pretty confident that these lower ones are gonna be fine where they are. But I'd hate to weld them up and then find out they're not. But I'd also hate to mock it up and then have one snap because it's only 4 tack welds holding on and we're lifting the entire weight of a car. Yeah, I don't know. I better have lunch and eat a cheeseburger and think about this. I've unbolted our bracket, or our jig. I'm going to take a gamble on these spot welds, or tack welds. They're good tack welds. They're going to be fine. I'm going to bolt the coilovers on now and just kind of see what happens. Okay, there's the top one. Both bottom ones are in now. So good news is it's hanging completely on the coilovers, and we've still got clearance in here, which means we don't need to bend this anymore because the rear end will never drop any lower than where it's at now. And we've got plenty of room to get our wheels on and off. What I'm gonna do now is jack the rear end back up. And I've left these in because this was set at where we want our ride height to be. So we want this spring to compress and start lifting the car off the jack stands right about the same time that this is touching. So I'm going to leave those in there for now just to see where we're at. Okay, I think we've made contact and our springs have I don't know if our springs have bottomed out yet and we've made contact. So what does that mean? What are we gonna do? We need more lift. Let's try it on the second hole. I'm gonna lift this out of the bottom hole. We'll try the middle hole. We've got both sides swapped to the middle hole. Let's lift it up again and see what happens. Oh yeah, we're lifting off our jack stands right there. Cool. You know what? I don't want to stick my fingers in there, obviously, to measure, but it kind of looks like where we're at right now, if we were still on the original hole, it would have started lifting off right about as it touched. So I think our bottom hole is probably fine. Let's hook it back up in the bottom hole, and we'll take these little like fixture plates that we made up there. We'll take them out and see what it looks like. While the weight is still on it, I just want to quickly measure 4 3/4, and we were at 6 3/4 before. So 2 inches, 2 whole inches is how much that spring compressed. So another thing I just realized is our spring is going to rub on the back of the rear end tube, which means this mount up here, when we make the final one, it's like if we move it further back, it should tip this away. I've also taken a measurement from eye to eye with the weight on it, and we're at 12 inches, which means I might be able to make this easier, like just take a piece of tubing that's 12 inches long, or has like 2 holes drilled in it from 12 inches to 12 inches, and use it as like a mock-up plate or a mock-up shock. So now that we know how much the spring's gonna compress and that this is gonna work, I'm gonna drop it down one more time. And we'll take our coilovers off and start building our proper upper shock mounts. I've just unbolted our fixture here, and it is 3 inches. So let's jack this up one last time and then measure from the top of the tube to the frame, and I think it's gonna be in the 3-inch ballpark. Up and at 'em. Okay, our jack stands have no tension on them right now. And we're actually a little over 3 inches. So cool, that works good. We can adjust, once we've got it all together, we can still thread this down a little bit to lower it down more. And then yeah, same on the other side. We've got 3.5 inches or so, maybe close to 4. Interesting that when we did this the first time, when we had it on the lower hole, that never happened. I wonder why it's different this time, or else maybe we just, I don't know, never noticed before. I just took the coilovers off again, and I think I'm just gonna pull the whole rear end back out, because we still have to weld all this up, and that's way easier to weld up on the bench, and also not having a rear end in there will give us all sorts of room to start building our proper upper shock brackets. And I mean, we've got everything that we need right there. We don't need the rear end in here anymore. All right, well, now that we've got that out of here, we can get nice access to here. I think I've got a plan for this. So for starters, these are, as we talked about earlier, these are the old shock mounts that someone made out of, it looks like just square tubing, some 1x1, maybe 1.5 by 1.5 square tubing. So those are awesome because they're in the right spot, but they're a little light duty. Now, the way these have been welded in here, all the way around like that, they're going to be a huge pain in the ass to get out. So I've got a plan. I think I'm going to take this tubing here, and I am going to tap this tubing so that a 5/8 bolt will thread into it. And then I think, this is 1-inch tubing, I think I will drill this hole to 1 inch, slide this tubing into it. Obviously, we're going to cut it to the right length. This is just a crop that I had. But we'll drill this hole out so that this tubing slides all the way into the backside, like up in here of this square tubing. And then we can weld it around this side and weld it to this side. And that's going to give it 2 points of contact. So I'm confident that'll be nice and secure. And then we can just thread our top coilover bolt into the tubing. On top of that, I think I will cut out a gusset that will box this in as well as triangulate up to our top edge up here. And that's just going to reinforce this even more. Instead of, all the load being right here, the load will get distributed all along here, and all the way through that whole piece. And I think that should be plenty strong. So basically, I guess step one is we're going to have to drill this out. This is a 1/2 inch inside diameter. So we'll drill this out and then tap it to a 5/8 18, which is 5/8 coarse thread. Sorry, fine thread. 5/8 fine thread. I picked up some more hardware at the store. This is 5/8 by 18 fine thread. Grade 8 bolt. So I went with a grade 8 bolt for the coilovers top and bottom because they are a single shear bolt, meaning they're not going to have like a tab on each side that bolts to. They're just going to be bolted on one side, like right there. So these coilovers came with grade 5 bolts. As you saw when we mocked it up, they had a grade 5 bolt in there, which would probably be okay, but I swapped it out for grade 8 just in case, just to make it a little bit stronger. So I did a little bit of research on that. So this is called like a single shear point, or a single shear mount, meaning like it's only got a mount on one side, not both sides. Both sides is a double shear, which is how like this would be like a double shear. The bolt goes through one side and the other side. So it's got 2 points of contact, which is twice as strong. So the 4-length bolts, they're all grade 5 bolts, and they should be plenty strong for that. But the coilovers, because they're single shear, I wanted to bump it up to a grade 8. So I did a bit of research on that, and from what I could find, a grade 5 bolt like this is why I say a grade 5 bolt probably would be fine, is for this bolt to shear, it takes 22,000 pounds of pressure. This car does not weigh 22,000 pounds. And keep in mind, the weight of this car is going to be distributed over 4 bolts because we've got, 1, 2 on each coilover. So that's 4 bolts. A grade 8 bolt, the strength for this to shear is 27,000 pounds. So 5,000 pounds more. So there's a couple theories. I've never been able to find proof of one. Some people say that a grade 8 bolt, while it is stronger, it is more brittle, meaning it will take more pressure, but when it reaches that breaking point, it's going to snap. Whereas a grade 5 bolt the snapping point is less than a grade 8 bolt, but before it gets to the point that it's going to snap, it will actually bend. Whereas a grade 8 bolt won't bend, it'll just snap. I've been trying to find research to find the bottom of this because a lot of people are like, oh, that's an old wives' tale, and other people are like, well, no, actually, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, you could spend a week on the internet trying to find the answer, and I don't know what the answer is. But what I do know is I put these together tons with grade 8 bolts, never had an issue, so I'm just going to stick with what I know. Got this chucked up in the old hand lathe. Gonna drill it out, and then we'll tap it with a 5/16 by 18 tap. All right, these are both done, drilled out to 1 inch. So I changed my plan a little bit. Originally, I was just gonna open this up to 1 inch and have the tubing come in and just weld to the backside of this. But I'm only gonna be able to weld it on a little bit on that side and a little bit on this side. So then I thought, why don't I just drill it all the way through 1 inch, and we'll slide the tubing all the way back into this cross member. And no, I'm not gonna be able to weld it to that cross member. I'll still only be able to weld it there and there, but at least it's going through, like probably a 1/4 inch, maybe more of material in there. So it'll have, like, the force is gonna be going this way on it, up and down. So while it's in there, although the weld will only be on the side, it's still gonna be protruding through the inside, and it'll just give it, I think it'll be a lot stronger that way. So this is from here to here was 1 3/8. So I don't know, maybe we'll cut our piece to 2 inches, and then we'll know it'll protrude through the backside a bit, and then it'll stick through this side, I don't know, 1/4 inch or so. So we've got some meat to weld around there. The old shock brackets, do I still have them down here? So they stuck out, like, what's that? At least a 1/2 inch, maybe even 5/8 of an inch. And if you'll remember, the coilover was too far this way, and the coil spring was gonna rub on the rear end. So if we have this at a 1/4 inch sticking out, it will tip that coilover away from the housing. 2 inches. A little bit of a slip fit. Those are both in place, ready to weld. Before I weld them up though, I'm gonna go ahead and make this gusset now. So I just measured from here to up here, we got 2 3/8. And then if we come out 1 1/2 from there, should put us right on the inside edge here, so that we can, like, get a nice good weld in there. And we'll come out 1 1/2 inches, we'll go up 1 1/2 inches, and then angle back. All right, so from here to here, we've got our 2 3/8, and then we come out 1 1/2 inches, up 1 1/2 inches, and then come in. I've also came in 0.2 inches and down, and what this is for is where that square tubing is welded onto the cross member right there. Right here is the weld that they made. So this piece can't fit flush up against the original cross member because of the weld. So this is notched out to basically, like, butt up to the weld, but also allow this to butt up against the cross member. And then we can just go ahead and weld that, and then weld their weld to this piece and the cross member all together. So I'm gonna cut these out, and we'll go ahead and prep everything and then weld it up. Oh good, they do fit, because I went ahead and cut all 4 out before I test fit them. Here you can see where it's notched to go around the old weld. worked out pretty well, I think. It should be plenty strong. I'm gonna let this cool down, and then we'll chase the holes with the tap just to clean them out in case they got distorted from the heat or anything. While this is cooling down, I'm gonna go ahead and weld the rear end up. So on the rear end, we've got our lower coilover brackets, which we've tacked on, and then we've got our 4-link brackets, which are just tacked on. I'm gonna TIG weld these. So if you're wondering why I'm TIG welding these and I MIG welded underneath, like the 4-link mounts are MIG welded and the upper coilover brackets that we just did are MIG welded. The main reason why I MIG welded underneath the car is just because TIG welding underneath the car is a little bit awkward, because you got a filler rod in one hand, you got your torch in the other hand, and then you got to run everything with a foot. And it's just, sometimes it's a bit much. It can be done, but you just really got to be like, whew. And the other reason I chose the MIG under there is just because it's, whatever is coated on that frame, it's like some sort of oil or something. It's really dirty. And underneath it, it's like the metal's not super clean. Even when I sanded it, there were still like some rust bits and stuff in there, and TIG welding doesn't really like that. So this, we've got, very clean metal, brand new metal, and it's super easy to get to. Another reason I've chose TIG on this is for those that watched the video when we narrowed the rear end. Here's the pieces that I cut out, and look how thick those are. Those are super thick. That's like 3/8. And my MIG welder just isn't quite heavy duty enough to weld, like to penetrate super deep into stuff like that. I've done it in the past and never had an issue, but the TIG is just, my TIG's got a lot more oomph than my MIG, so I know it's gonna get in there and burn deeper. That's it. That's the main reason why. It's mainly just a comfort thing. It's more comfortable to MIG weld underneath a car than it is to TIG weld. Yeah, that worked out great, except for I forgot to put spacers in here. So before we put this back in, we'll measure this to make sure they didn't squeeze in a bit. It's no big deal to push them, like spread them back out again if they did move when I welded it, but we'll worry about that tomorrow when this is all cooled down. It's basically ready to put together now. I'm gonna reach out to Philippe right now and see if, before we put this in, like what its plan is for paint. If we just want to give this a quick coat of black paint before we put it in, because there's really no reason to take it back out again once it goes in. Same with our wishbone, or not our wishbone, our 4-link brackets that are welded to the rear, the frame. We can probably paint those, paint the panhard bar or diagonal link, whatever you want to call it. We could paint that as well and then put it all together.
Friday morning. In fact, it is Black Friday. You guys know Black Friday, that big like U.S. event. May I almost even call it a U.S. holiday, where everybody goes down to stores bright and early in the morning and waits in line to beat the crap out of each other to buy a big screen TV. Just a mere 12, 14 hours after sitting down at the table with their family and having a big dinner, being thankful for everything they have. Black Friday. Well, here in Canada at LG Speed and Custom, it's just Friday, but this rear end is black. Huh? Get it? Black Friday? You see where I was going with that? Yesterday, which was just a Thursday here, I painted all of this black. I painted this with this PPG chassis black that is a direct to metal paint. It works okay. The coverage really sucks on it. This took like 7 or 8 coats, but when you factor in that you don't have to spray primer. You can just paint this direct to metal. You know, it kind of evens out. So this turned out amazing. If you're wondering why it's upside down right now, it's because when this is in the car, like this is the side that you see. So I hung it upside down so that the chance of dry spray or runs or anything is minimal on the side you see. And, you know, it actually turned out amazing. This thing could win. This is best paint at the Grand National Roadster Show right here. Painted outside in the elements, hanging off my forklift. So I am going to start shuffling this stuff to the back of the shop, where I'm going to attempt to not only flip this upside down, or right side up, I guess, install it in the car without scratching anything.
Underneath here, I'm just cleaning out these upper coilover little threaded bungs that we made. And you'll notice it's black under here as well. So this chassis was, somebody had already painted it with like that asphalt undercoating stuff. So I just touched it up and kind of like freshened it up under here. I didn't use the asphalt stuff. I used the stuff that actually dries hard, because I don't really like the asphalt stuff that's, excuse me. I don't really like the asphalt stuff that's like, it never fully dries. So I don't know how this will work over top of the asphalt stuff, but whatever. I mean, it looks good. That was the objective, I guess.
Good news, I've got this rear end in without scratching the crap out of everything. All the 4-link bars are back on. Our track link bar, or diagonal link bar is back on. So now we can go ahead and bolt these coilovers in. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on the top ones, just because they don't have a nylock that goes behind them like all the other bolts do. And then for the bottom, just bolt it all back together like normal. I'm going to have to lift the jack up a little bit. Let's give it one more pump of the jack. There we go, that's much happier. And we've got, you guys can't see it from over there, but we've got good clearance between our coil spring and the rear end housing. So I'll tighten all this up. I haven't tightened these up yet, because you don't want to tighten all your suspension bushings until the suspension is like under load. Like we'll jack this up until it starts to pick up off the jack stands, and then tighten that up. And that just stops your bushings from like getting all twisted up.
Yeah, look at that. Tons of clearance now. That worked out great. Let's put the bump stops back in. Bump stops are in. We've got good clearance. I've jacked the rear end up, and our jack stands are loose right now, so the rear suspension is under load. Let's go ahead and snug all this stuff up, and we're done.
Bushings are all tight. Let's pull the jack out and put our wheels back on.
Not too bad. Love the look of fresh hardware with shiny black paint. This thing is gonna look mean. I like it. Rear suspension. Done.
Man, this turned out really good. I'm happy with it. It looks so nice. So, I know exactly what you're thinking. What's next on Philippe's 46 Ford Coupe? Well, going back to the front, we don't have an engine. It's pretty empty in there. Last week, Philippe brought over this. So that'll be next week's project, is we'll start putting this engine and transmission in. Shannon, my wife, she's been just slowly chipping away at this over the week, assembling it. She put the tunnel ram on, distributor, carburetors, put the pulleys on, put the engine and transmission together. So it's pretty much ready to go in. So we'll have to build transmission mounts, motor mounts. We're going to have to whittle away a good portion of this X member to get the Turbo 350 to fit through there. So stay tuned. If you haven't already subscribed, do it right now. Much appreciated. Subscribe and hit notifications so that when the next video on Philippe's car comes out, you know all about it. If you want to support this channel, if anything that I did on this build you learned something from and you want to say thanks, go hit up lgspeedcustom.com and get yourself some LG Speed and Custom merch, some t-shirts, maybe some stickers, maybe some parts. We've got it all on there. Go check it out. Fill your shopping cart. Exit through the gift shop. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks, Philippe, for letting me build such a great project. This has been a lot of fun. And we'll see you guys on the next video.